Alrighty, folks. Hey, welcome to another Thoughts with Phil, episode 2. So, this is 2 days in a row. We're actually making some progress here. Alright, so what I'm going to cover in this episode is I've been asked recently by Jarrell on LinkedIn. He said, hey, I'm hearing from manufacturers, they're saying wireless is the future of building automation systems. So is that true? Is wireless actually the future? Are all these wired systems going to go away? Is that a bunch of marketing fluff to basically take wireless products that are on the market and find a home for them? What is this whole wireless thing? So what I want to really go through here is what is wireless? Because there's some common misunderstanding of that. What kind of happens when you utilize wireless on a job? And where you would want to actually utilize wireless? And kind of how wireless is going to be utilized in the future with building automation systems. So what is wireless? Okay, well, wireless is communicating data without wires. All right, I mean, hey, pretty easy explanation, right? There's a couple different types of wireless. So you have Wi-Fi, which is what you commonly have within your house. Okay? You have mesh, which is what you're seeing some BAS manufacturers starting to use. And then you have cellular. There's other kinds of wireless. There's microwave, there's Li-Fi, stuff like that. But we're going to be focused primarily on those three because each one of them has a different use case and each one of them has pros and cons. So Wi-Fi, basically, it's 802.11 standard, and it allows you to have an access point that a device connects to. It basically has an SSID, which is a network name, and that device connects to that, right? And then these access points, they have channels. And these channels have a certain amount of bandwidth in them. And bandwidth is the capacity to transfer data. So within these channels, right? Within these channels, you have the ability to transfer data. And I don't have the channels memorized off the top of my head, but I think 5 gig has something like, I don't know. I could Google this. But I don't remember. It's like 30, 60 channels, something like that. And then 2.4 has, if I remember correctly, around 11 channels. That may not be 100% accurate. But basically, 5 gigahertz has a lot more channels. Now here's the thing. You have these kind of cells that come off of the AP. And in order to keep the channels from interfering with one another, each AP within its little cell is going to have a different channel because you don't want the data on one channel to interrupt the data on another channel. And as you're walking around with your device, the AP notices your device and a wireless LAN controller transfers you from device to device. That is how Wi-Fi works. That's how your cellular works with cell towers. Okay, so that's kind of how that stuff works. Now, mesh. Mesh is this network where rather than having APs that kind of broadcast out, you have these little mesh devices that communicate to one another, and they do basically point-to-point communication, and they hop back to a central mesh controller, which is connected to the wired network. So that is essentially how mesh works. And then 3G, 4G, basically cellular backhaul, what this is this is a direct connection to a cellular network. So where do you see these things, right? Well, Wi-Fi you tend to see inside buildings, and there's manufacturers that are going down the Wi-Fi path. And the pros are that IT knows how to use it. You can utilize the existing Wi-Fi, but the cons are that you have to utilize the existing Wi-Fi and you have to work with IT. Now, mesh is this kind of standalone network where the devices can act as their own APs, essentially. That's a very high-level explanation of mesh. Now, mesh, what's going to happen with that is there's a lot of IT folks who aren't comfortable with it. You're going to be basically forming and maintaining your own IT mesh network, but it's self-healing. If a specific point goes down, it can route to other ones, and it's something that can act independent of the IT infrastructure. And then finally, you have cellular. And you see cellular being used in a lot of remote sites where they want to have a dedicated backhaul link, meaning that if I'm connected to a DSL modem and that goes down, I want to have a cellular connection, okay? And that cellular connection is going to allow me to go and be able to transfer and connect to that site regardless of if the DSL's down. You see this a lot in smart equipment too, where they kind of want to phone home to collect all that data for their analytics and service platforms. So, why would you use wireless, and when would you use wireless? Well, I kind of just went through it, right? If you have an existing office building or auditorium or anything with clear shot plenums and very little interference, then that is a good opportunity to potentially use wireless controls. However, what a lot of folks don't factor in with wireless is, back when I worked for Johnson Controls, one of my things I would do is I would design RTLS network layouts, I would design Wi-Fi network layouts, and by doing that, I started to understand things like channel overlap, I started to understand things like signal strength and bandwidth capabilities, and there's a lot to wireless. So if you're a BAS person and you're like, hey, I'm just going to go put in wireless controls. Whereas in the past with wired controls, it didn't really matter where you put the controller. With wireless, it very much matters because of interference. You could have both electrical interference as well as solid wall interference. You could have a lot of issues. So you have to go and lay out your wireless controls, and you have to figure out, where do I place them? Where do I put them so that they can communicate with the AP if you're using Wi-Fi? And this requires a different set of skills from the BAS professional. So I think that is one barrier. Man, and you can hear my voice is just not working today. But that is one barrier for wireless. That barrier being, stream went offline. That was weird. Let me figure this out. Let me figure out why this stream is having issues. Alrighty. This is what happens when you record stuff live. You start to have issues with your stream. Am I not using wireless? What is going on here? Alright, I'm connected. I don't know. It might be because of the storm that's going on. Who knows? Anyways, so what I was saying, right, is you need to have a certain set of skills in order for you to go and be able to design wireless networks. So I think that's one barrier. And what else we've got going on here? So not only do you have that, but then you have to interact with the IT groups. And also, you have the reliability of wireless. Now, wireless is reliable to a point. However, wired is usually more reliable. So, one of the things that you want to understand when you are looking at this is, what is the site? Is there interference? Do I have the capability to do the design? Can I lay out wireless so that it will actually be communicating accurately? You want to address all these things, okay? So, once you've done that, what is the future of wireless? Well, I think the future of wireless is in a couple areas. One, large commercial office buildings that are going through retrofits. That is a good opportunity for wireless. They tend to have cube farms, wide open spaces, not a lot of interference, wide open plenums. By the way, if you don't know what plenum is, it's the space above your ceiling tile before you actually hit the hard floor. That's where you tend to do your J-hooks to run your wire. That's where your cable trays go. That's where your piping and ductwork go. That's the plenum. Now, so office spaces, auditoriums, museums, anywhere with large open spaces tend to do well with wireless. Places that don't do well with wireless. Airports. I know you would think airports would be a good wireless, but there's actually a lot of electrical interference, as well as if you're using the Wi-Fi, you tend to have to add your own APs because the public Wi-Fi APs are being overutilized. So you've got that. Hospitals tend to be a bad place. Campuses tend to be a bad place for wireless. Now, does that mean that there's no possibility for wireless? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. However, when you can run wired cable, and you know wired cable works, and you don't have to grow a new set of skills in order to troubleshoot wired solutions, you're going to see folks gravitate towards the path of least resistance. We've had, in some way, shape, or form, wireless controls out for the better part of 7 to 8 years now, and you still don't see market penetration. And it has to do with the design, the skill set, and just the reliability. Now, as I mentioned, those things can be largely addressed through learning design, making sure your designs work, and using them in the right instances. But a lot of folks aren't going to want to do that. So, where do I see wireless coming into play? I see wireless coming into play in mesh networks. I think that has a very large future. I think the ability to distribute sensor networks throughout a building, especially since sensors are becoming such low-cost items now, I think that you will see that sensor networks become a viable solution, and those will utilize mesh networking instead of wireless networking, instead of Wi-Fi networking. I think you're going to see an increase of folks using cellular backhaul to connect to their buildings. It's just much easier. The cost of cellular has come down. The bandwidth of cellular has gone up, meaning the data flow rate has gone up. I think you're going to see folks using that for remote sites where they want to do remote connectivity. They don't want necessarily the negatives associated with just sticking something on a cable modem and giving it a public IP. So you'll see that. Not necessarily wireless controls, but a utilization of wireless. Where I'm on the fence is I've heard a lot of manufacturers talk about wireless sensors. So wireless temperature sensors, wireless flow sensors, all these things. And I'm on the fence about whether that is going to be something that is practical or not. Because here's the deal. If you've ever installed anything in the field, this isn't going to be new to you. But if you haven't, this might be a shocker. So you put an air handler on the roof, right? This air handler, you often build it in segments. And what you do is you run the wire while you're there. And that takes minimal time. And it's wired. And you can troubleshoot wire. I can take my multimeter and put it on the actual terminal blocks and measure continuity. I can measure voltage. I can do all sorts of things to make sure my sensors work. When I start to introduce wireless sensors, that all goes out the window. Because once again, I have to have a skill set. I mean, as an industry, I don't mean to insult anyone who's watching this. I'm sure it's not the case for you. But as an industry, our maturity level around IT and just IT knowledge is so ridiculously low. I mean, the fact that we still have folks struggling to understand IP addresses and routers and switching and VLANs and routes, I mean, that speaks to the really crappy job that we have done as an industry at educating our folks. And that needs to change. That's ridiculous that we have 1980s concepts that our industry doesn't understand. I mean, it's not like freaking IP addresses have just appeared out of nowhere. We've been using them for a long time. So that technical knowledge, that capability, that is what we need to impart into the industry if they're going to go and actually be able to implement wireless. So those are my thoughts on wireless. Essentially, there's three types of wireless: Wi-Fi, mesh, cellular backhaul. Each one serves a different purpose. Wireless in itself requires a different set of skills, and until manufacturers provide better tooling for the design, troubleshooting, and support of wireless, I don't see it catching on. I don't know how a manufacturer is going to address the interference aspect, both physical and electrical interference, when it comes to implementing wireless within certain building types. So I think that is a variable. So I do not necessarily believe that wireless will replace. Actually, I think wireless will largely still be a very small part of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The total makeup of controller types. And once again, I apologize for the really shitty quality of this live stream, but we've got a storm coming through, and I think that's why the internet is just being so crap right now. So, with that being said, another thing for another day that maybe you folks want to ask me about is my thought on supervisory devices. I think that is the big change. I think the big change coming to the industry is supervisory devices and cloud services. I think a lot of manufacturers are realizing the positive uptick in renewable revenue and predictable revenue that comes with cloud services, and they're also realizing that supervisory devices, they don't serve much of a purpose anymore with the advent and reliability of cloud. So that's a whole nother topic for another live stream. But thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments below the video. Be sure to click on the subscribe button and subscribe to the video. And also go and ask any questions you want below the video and let me know what you would like to ask me, and I will answer it on a future live stream. Thanks so much. Take care. And I will talk to you all again tomorrow, hopefully with a more reliable stream, because this storm is wreaking havoc. Thanks a ton. Take care.